My name is Victor. I am the occult technician, and this is Mind War. Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Join the Mind War today. Enlist at patreon.com/mindwar. Now, back to the show. Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Folks, we're going to pick up where we left off in the book Magic, History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. We are still in the early phases of our series on magic here in the Mind War podcast. We are still in the history section of this book, and we are starting on page 20. And page 20 starts like this. Of course, these demonic things, which represent the most tremendous focus of force in the universe, play a central role in the existence of early man. It's amazing to hear that sentence, to think that, these forces that we would label as demonic are so important even throughout history, especially when we think of the definition of demonic in today's society and culture. We think of things that are demonic as evil, and we're going to get more into what these demons really are, what they truly represent, right? But again, the author says that these demonic things represent the most tremendous focus of force in the universe. How do we harness that power? How do we commune with it? To deal with them, make them subservient, or avoid their potentially damaging effects is his most important task. Again, this idea of making the demonic forces subservient to us, commanding them, controlling them. That's not what we do here in the Mind War, right? Again, some of the language that we find throughout the book harkens back to old thoughts, maybe, but we see it more and more as we go through the book, that the author isn't focusing directly on subservience and becoming a master and controlling, these forces. But again, it's communing with them, being partners with them, working in tandem with them. Soon in this way, a magical science and technique developed, which is with its main features part of the possession of every folk comrade, just like cookery, gardening, animal husbandry, etc., but which is naturally in its heights and in its entirety only available to a few, who then play the chosen role of the magician in the narrowest sense of the word. Okay. The practices that we learn will become our magical science and techniques. Again, I've told you over and over again, I'm going to share with you the techniques, but your belief in your style and the art you put into it and the purpose, that's all your own. But there are certain techniques that are fundamental and universal. These techniques can be in possession of every folk comrade. I love that. He calls us folk comrades. And he describes our magical practices in an equivalent to cooking, gardening, and taking care of animals. cooking is an art. And you can't tell me it's not. Because you can sit 4 or 5 people down and say, here's the recipe, here's the ingredients, and 4 out of the 5 people are going to make an unedible meal. Even though the recipe was there, the directions are there, the ingredients are all the same cooking utensils and everything. 4 of them, if they are not artists in cooking, are going to come up with trash that you can't eat. But that one person who is an artist is going to make some of the most delicious food. Same thing with gardening. You can take a seed and put it in the ground, dump some water on it and walk away, and maybe a plant will grow, maybe it won't. Who knows? Maybe Mother Nature takes over and does it for you. But often that seed, maybe it doesn't even grow at all. Maybe nothing comes out of it. Maybe if it starts to grow, it just ends up dying because, again, gardening is an art. You have to continuously practice at it. You have to care for the plant. You have to continue to water it and fertilize it, make sure it doesn't get too much sun, or make sure it doesn't get killed in a frost one night or something, right? There's an art to it. But it says, in its height and its entirety, it's only available to a few. That's you. The mind warriors, citizen samurais, guerrilla gurus, and warrior monks here in the Mind War podcast. You are going to be one of the few who can call themselves magicians. Now, where have we heard something like this before? From the creator of the Gateway Experience tapes, Robert Monroe, when he said that he believes at any given time in history, there are about 6,000 people who actually can master the techniques taught in the Gateway Experience tapes. I'd like to think of it like this. Prior to the tapes, there were probably 6,000 people. But with the creation of those tapes, I think almost anyone, well, not almost anyone. We have to, I think we all understand that some people just will never get it. Some people don't have the ability to get it. And that's okay. That's fine. Let them do their thing. As long as they're not coming against you and bothering you, they're fine. But I think that magic and magical teachings and techniques can be taught to a much wider audience than it has in the past. But until then, it's only us few who have chosen to play the role of magician. And folks, as we go through this, you're going to see how long it took me to earn the title magician. And I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. And who told me that I was ultimately a magician. It's a beautiful story. I can't wait to share it with you in the future. The offspring for such magicians is created by means of artificial selection, so that the caste of the magicians more and more segregates itself from the profane crowd and either recruits its offspring entirely from their ranks or picks new individuals from outside their ranks according to their abilities. When he talks about the offspring of magicians, he's not talking about their children. When we talk about the offspring of magicians, we're not talking about their physical children. Instead, we're talking about an artificial selection. So I like this. It says, so the caste of the magicians. The word caste, right? So we hear of the caste system, like in India. It's really big there. You have levels of people, and they're all different castes, right? The poor, the middle class, and the rich, right? Those are all different castes, right? So the castes of the magicians are more segregated. And basically what that means is that this is a voluntary thing, right? Like being born is an involuntary thing. You were forced to be born. Someone impregnated someone else. They allowed the baby to grow. Now you're born. You didn't choose that. You were forced into life, right? But becoming a magician is voluntary. And so it's, in some ways, much like the secret societies, you have to go and search for that information, and you have to find someone who does it. That's why you're here with the occult technician, as I'm sharing with you the things I've learned over the last few years. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm not a professional. I'm not a member of any secret society. I'm not a 33rd degree Freemason. I'm not a cardinal or deacon in some church. I'm none of those things, okay? I'm not a guru, none of that stuff. I'm just a guy who a few years ago found himself in a really bad state. I was in a bad place. I was sick. I was alone. I was full of hate, sadness, and I knew that I had to do something. And for the first time in my life, I said, I'm going to follow my own desires and the things that I think are interesting. And I'm going to learn wherever the knowledge is. I'm not going to go to one specific group and say, oh, I need to join this group because they have all the knowledge that I need to know. I took it from wherever it came from. And that's how we ended up with this book, Magic History Theory Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. And this book just happened to be maybe Adolf Hitler's favorite book in his library. That's how we ended up here, okay? We didn't start going, I want to practice Nazi magic, right? That wasn't anywhere in the game plan. But what happened is over time, as I followed the breadcrumbs, I knew, I would try a technique that I learned somewhere. Does it work? Yes. I would keep going down that path. I would try another technique I learned in, maybe another TikTok video or something. I try that. Did it work? No. Seemed cheesy, seemed fake, didn't work, nothing came out of it. Cool. We don't go down that path any further. That's the beauty of it. Okay. So again, our caste, our magicians, is a voluntary thing. You volunteered, you enlisted in the mind war. Very soon, their suitability as magicians arises as a result of certain indicators, and the inborn abilities of the neophyte are increased with the appropriate education, fertilized and led to their maximum perfection. Okay. So again, if we were a group of magicians, a society of magicians, if you will, there would probably be some type of formal hierarchy where, the leaders would look to the younger people to see which ones are talented, and they would foster whatever those talents are, right? Again, that's not really where we're at this point in the mind war. So let's go on here. It says Las Casas reports, for example. Okay, so I'm not sure what Las Casas is. Maybe a person, maybe some type of magazine or something. But it says it reports that the Piacas people, the magicians of the Red Indians from Cumana, select from 12 to 15-year-old boys those which have the natural indications to be the most qualified and ablest to be educated in the art of magic. So this tribe of Indians, they would choose boys who are between the ages of 12 and 15 to continue their education because they were showing indications of being magicians, right? I think this is exactly what should happen for all young men, okay? Not necessarily going to become magicians, but I think at the age of 12 to 15, right, you need to be taken out of school and you need to start learning whatever your profession is going to be, right? Go out and start learning metalwork, woodwork, working on cars, working on computers. That's kind of what I did starting at that time, right? Get away from general education for young men at the age of 12 plus and get them focused on something. Make them become professionals at something and do it with a lot of physical activity. Allow them to exercise half the day and learn and work the other half of the day. Anyways, so these tribes would choose young men to continue to educate in magic. The chosen ones are sent to marked locations in the lonely forests where some very old piakas live and where the young people are disciplined for 2 years, similar to a school. So that's exactly what I did. Like I said, I'm at year 3.5 of practicing magic. And those first 2 years, man, I felt like I was in the wilderness alone, right? Struggling, learning. And it was a boot camp of sorts, right? And so a complete isolation is obtained to achieve the most complete disentanglement from profane surroundings and concentrate the forces. Also very important. They're talking about how these young men were privileged enough to be able to leave for 2 full years and just practice magic in isolation with their teacher. And it kept them away from the profane. Here's what that means, right? For me, those first 2 years of my magical practice, 2022 and 2023, I was very isolated. I lived by myself. I spent the majority of my time alone. I remember at one point I had been alone for 10 days straight, not seeing another person, not speaking a word to another person. I spoke to my buddy Leo, my best buddy, my Boston Terrier, but I didn't speak to anyone. And I realized after the 10th day, I said, oh shit, I better go visit my parents or something, right? I got to go talk to a human. But there was a ton of isolation. And what was nice is I was isolated, like the author says, from the profane. So I wasn't out there, as I was studying magic and trying to build up these magical forces within me, they weren't being corrupted with the dramas of work and of other people bringing their drama into your life. And honestly, I was still working at the library at that time. And as some of you have been following along for a while now, you know that my time at the library, I went in with good intentions to be this nice guy who wanted to learn about his community and get to know the people in my community and help them the best way that I could. I was like, I did a lot of great things for 20 years. I have all this knowledge. I want to share it with them. And when I got there, I realized, oh, these are a bunch of profane monsters. They are awful. There were good people there, don't get me wrong, but the majority were just creeps and losers and users. They were gross. And I just said, oh, this is what we segregate ourselves against. This is what we segregate ourselves away from. And it was all races. This wasn't a race thing. Trust me, some of the white people that came in, they were the worst, right? But it's, if you have the ability in those early days to kind of isolate yourself, it's going to help. I don't know if it's necessarily, but it's going to help. It's going to help you stay focused, and you're not going to absorb a lot of these negative energies from other people while you're trying to learn these positive magical techniques and tools. It goes on here to say, Alfred Lehman tells about the inauguration ceremony of the Winnebagos in North America. I think the Winnebagos were a Native American tribe, right? And so the author, his name was Alfred Neiman. He goes on to say this. The inauguration ceremony of the new medicine men is called the Medicine Celebration and is a very old institution, which, like most of their celebrations, consists almost entirely of dancing. Interesting. The participating members form a community for themselves and have certain secrets which are never disclosed to non-members. That's a lot like secret society stuff. Again, I'm breaking all the rules here, folks. Okay? Not only did I not join a secret society, but I'm not keeping any of this hidden anymore. As the occult technician, I am trying to, in the same way that I would try to educate all of my fellow coworkers about how computers worked when I was an information technologist, when I worked in information technology for 20 years for the United States military, for the United States government, for the financial and retail institutions, for the educational systems. I worked in the healthcare industry. I did IT in just about every industry that's out there, okay? And I constantly was trying to teach everyone else, all of the fellow coworkers, here's how the technology works. I didn't hold it to myself, and I saw a lot of guys do this. Oh, you got to keep everything a secret. That's how you keep your job. Don't tell anybody how to fix anything. That's how you keep your job. Dude, that is not what I did. I did the opposite. I told everybody, here's how you fix this. Here's how you do it. And what happened? I rose. I became the most sought after and popular technician in any crew that I worked. People were always looking to me for the answers because I would provide them to them. It wasn't about hiding anymore. It's about sharing the truth, and that's what we're doing here in the Mind War podcast. The celebration is held in a specially arranged hut. There, the members sitting at both of the long sides. The middle of the room is empty to give space for the dancers. The new candidates have to fast 3 days before the inauguration. Fasting has never been something I've been able to successfully do, and I think it's something I need to look at very carefully, especially for those of you that have been around since the beginning. You know that I've talked about in the past that I have a chronic disease. It is a digestive issue in my digestive tract. It's extremely painful. I have to take medication for it every 2 weeks in the form of a shot that I take in my leg. And years ago, before I started this magic stuff, I think it almost killed me. I had lost a ton of weight. I was down to about 150 pounds. I'm up to 190. I was 200 pounds the other day. Right. And, the fasting, I think is important. And I think it's something I want to look into more. I hear there's major benefits with it. And it's something I definitely want to look at more. And maybe during our series here, I'll actually experiment with it. Let's see. In the meantime, they are led to a secret place by the old medicine man that oversees the celebration and discloses all the mysteries of the society. Again, this author, Alfred Lehman, who's writing this little section on the Winnebago Indians of North America, even says that, these are mysteries that are kept in secret societies. During the fast, they also undergo a rigorous sweating cure where they are covered with carpets and are exposed to the fumes of certain roots. Interesting. After this is overcome, the celebrations begin. They consist of dance and speeches of the old medicine man, as well as a lot of strange activities. Okay, strange activities. What are those? That's what we want to know. Unfortunately, they don't go into more detail. But they do say that there is a rigorous sweating process after this fasting. They're covered with, he says, carpets. My guess is that actually was, furs, right? And it says they are breathing in the fumes of certain roots. So again, we're going to find that natural substances, natural growth substances like the magic mushrooms we talked about in the last episode, they play a major role in magic, right? We harness these natural things that change our state of mind and allow us to get into the state of somnambulance. Let's see. So this is in quotes. It says, Karata Rapoa, an anonymous scripture from the year 1785, reports about the inauguration ceremonies of the Egyptian priests. Now we're getting somewhere. We see that a lot of our secret societies like Freemasons and even a lot of the open religions today stem from Egyptian teachings. And it goes on here to say this: when someone fancied joining the Society of Kratoa Rapoa, he had to be strongly endorsed first by someone who was already inaugurated. I think secret societies do the same thing. You kind of have to have a sponsor to even get into them. Generally, this was done by the king himself by writing it to the priests. But the priests at first rejected the proposal in Heliopolis and directed him to the teachers of Memphis. We're not talking Memphis, Tennessee here, folks. We're talking about Memphis over in Europe. I think it was Rome or Greece, right? It says, from Memphis, he was directed to Theban. Finally, he would be circumcised. I don't know where we're going with that, folks, but there is no circumcision here in the Mind War. Okay. Well, I was, involuntarily, unconsensually circumcised as a tiny little baby, right? Into the Judeo-Christian, belief system. Now, of course, they told my parents, it's cleaner, it's scientifically proven that it's better, and blah, blah, blah. I think ultimately it was one of two things. It was one, to mark us as cattle to these religions. Because again, we read in the Bible that circumcision is the covenant between man and God. If you are not circumcised, you are not an actual, believer in God. You're not going to be, accepted by him, right? I think they then take the leftover parts of the circumcision and sell them to rich women, who then take those and turn them into creams and use them on their faces to look young. I get that from Sandra Bullock, and Ellen DeGeneres did a little interview where she talked about it. I'm not going to go into detail. It's totally insane. Just look up Ellen DeGeneres and whatever that fucking lady, who cares? Circumcision sucks. It's forced genital mutilation for the purpose of religious branding. It's non-consensual. It's extremely painful and traumatic, and it should be outlawed. Anyways, next, certain foods were prohibited, and he was not allowed to drink wine anymore until the time he reached the higher rank, where he at times was granted permission. Then he had to live many months in an underground cave, similar to a prisoner alone with his thoughts. They granted permission to write his thoughts down, which would be thoroughly examined to become acquainted with the mind of the new member. So that's kind of cool. As you're welcoming someone into your magical circle, right? Into your coven, these guys would take the new members and place them in a cave in isolation. Again, isolation is going to be important in this beginning. You get to know not only the magical techniques, but you get to know yourself, right? That's part of what the isolation is for. And they're saying here that while you're in isolation, you write your thoughts down. Journaling is another huge piece. We'll talk more about it. But every time I do magic, I write my journal, right? And it's cool because it says here that when the new member is forced into this isolation in a cave and are forced or asked to write their thoughts, the outside members are able to get to know them a little bit more. But more importantly, again, you get to know yourself more, because you're going to go back and read your journal over and over again. What was I thinking at that time? What was I going through? Why did I feel that pain then? Now that I'm outside of the pain, now that it is a year away from all the events and stuff that occurred that got you into a difficult situation, whatever it may be, now you can look back and kind of Monday morning quarterback it, right? So afterwards, he was left in a hallway with mercurial statues whereupon spells of Moors were written, which he had to memorize. I don't like the memorization stuff. That's one of the biggest things that kept me from joining secret societies. I would watch the rituals that they had to go through, and these men would just drone on with these memorization things. And I'm like, is this fucking grade school again? Are we just regurgitating nonsense? We're not doing that here in the Mind War. We don't do that in our, magical practices. I'm not ever going to tell you, here is a bunch of words you have to say, whether they have no meaning to you or not. Come up with your own fucking words. They'll come to you. I promise. As soon as he knew them by heart, Themosphorus, the introducer, came to him. In his hands he had a strong whip to stop the mob at the gate of the profane, where he allowed the soon-to-be inaugurated new member, the eyes of whom were blindfolded and his hands were enchained with a strong linen bandage. Again, sounds a lot like Freemasonic rituals, right? But again, this idea of keeping the profane at the gates. Again, there are just certain people who are not going to understand anything that we're saying or doing. And it's tough. You want everyone to be able to experience this, but they just can't. And you have to understand that. And some of the people in your life who you want to learn this the most are going to be the ones who stand against it the most, and you're going to have to write that off. You're going to have to deal with the fact that there are people in your life that you love, that are close to you, that you want to share this information with, but they're going to reject it. And they're going to reject you because of it. It's a tough pill to swallow, okay? But you got to do it. These examples will suffice to show the great exclusiveness of the magician caste. Again, the author here is really setting a high bar for the magician. We are part of an elite club. We've talked about that before. The mind warriors, citizen samurais, guerrilla gurus, and warrior monks. We are special. We are set aside. We have removed the fear from our hearts and minds. We've removed the cultural, societal, and religious wet blankets that hold us down. And we've gone into the darkest corners of information to find this knowledge wherever it was, right? And that's a beautiful thing. That's something to be proud of. But again, there's no more keeping it hidden. Now's the time. Now's the time of enlightenment. We are in the age of Aquarius, the age of enlightenment. It's time to share it with everyone. Only after long and exhausting inauguration ceremonies is admission granted. Because of the intricateness, many who were only driven by a volatile curiosity were discouraged. That's interesting. This is a lot to learn. And especially if you're going to do it on your own. This is your individual journey. Nothing that I'm going to share with you here is going to lead you to a group of people who have a master. I'm not your master. We're never going to meet, probably. The fact is, we're probably never going to meet. You can try to contact me on social media. I'll be glad to communicate with you in any form. But we don't have a hierarchy of people to turn to. A friend of mine, he told me what I was doing. He said, "You're doing chaos magic, bro." And chaos magic is lonely. Doesn't have to be. If you find other people in your first Earth Battalion, like-minded individuals who you want to practice magic with, please do it. Create your own hierarchy. Create your own structure. Create your own society if that's what you need to do. But here in the Mind War, that's not it. Our goal is to take things out of the darkness, no longer hidden, no longer occult, and we're going to share it with the world. Even if it's just the few people who listen to this podcast, you take the information and you share it with the masses. At the same time, it is proved during these measures if the apprentice has the necessary abilities in his body and his soul, and these abilities, if existence, will of course be greatly scattered by these sharp curves. You will be challenged. A great amount of irritability is a prerequisite for being granted permission into the circle of the magicians. You have to be irritable. Is that the right word? I think that's irritability. 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 Added to this are a lot of mannerisms and oddities which we today can still find frequently in people of genius. There are going to be odd little things and mannerisms that we do as magicians that people might not understand. Also, an epileptic characteristic is considered to be a sign of magical giftedness. Epileptic. Epilepsy. Where people start to wig out when they see bright lights. Okay? I think what he's talking about is a person's ability to get into the state of somnambulance, aka allowing themselves to be hypnotized, getting into a different state of mind while still staying conscious. In any case, we recognize that the magician in former times had a lot of features which we would today call psychopathic. That's right, folks. We are a bunch of psychopaths. I've said it before. And psychopaths, that word has been demonized. Today, we associate this term a derogatory meaning and do not think that most of the great things were created by these kind of psychopaths. That's right. The greatest leaders, the greatest inventors, the greatest teachers, the greatest warriors were all psychopaths. And so are you. Also, the magician of the early times, despite his abnormal predisposition, should not be pictured as an ill human in our sense of the word. We're not sick. There is nothing wrong with us. If there is a sickness, it has been forced upon us by the societal, cultural, and religious nonsense. It's the lies that we've been told. That's what makes us sick. We see it every day. It's in the news today. We're talking about how the fact that we're being poisoned by our food, poisoned by our medicine, poisoned by our environment physically. The organizations, corporations, and institutions that pollute our minds with their propaganda, poison our bodies with their chemicals, and corrupt our souls with their demonic and fake and unnecessary religions. That's where the illness comes from. We're not ill here in the mind war. In fact, we are healing our mind, body, and spirit. That's what we're doing here. We're not becoming ill anymore. We're not staying sick anymore. We're becoming healthy in all aspects of life. To the contrary, he had to be equipped with a great amount of robustness to be able to put up with the pathological sides of his being without impairment of his organism as a whole, and to match up to all the stress of this function that this function requires. You will be stressed, you will be tested, you're going to be put through the ringer as you practice magic, because you're going to put yourself in situations that you never thought you would, and you're going to overcome some of the most crushing things in your life. You're going to volunteer to be put in these difficult positions. And when you do, it strengthens yourself. It's just like exercising. You volunteer to lift that weight, even though it tears your muscles, even though it makes you sweat and you're exhausted and you're in pain the next day. But the following day, those new muscles have grown and you've become bigger and stronger than ever. Frequently, these magicians have been epic warlords who took an active part in battle and were because of their efficiency in war, a light unto all others. Dr. Ernst Schertl just told us that some of our fiercest, strongest, most successful leaders and generals who have led us into battle not only were psychopaths, but they were magicians as well. And I agree with him 100%. Oh boy. This is where the book really gets fun, folks. Just like with the Mind War series, Mind War, Mind Star, and Find Far, just like with the Gateway Experience tapes, the authors there, they taught us to strip away all of the societal, cultural, and religious teachings that have been forced upon us. In this book, written almost 100 years ago, does the same thing. This isn't anything new. This man, Dr. Ernst Schertl, he knew. And he says this: we know of the patriarch Abraham, who was undoubtedly magically gifted, that he had led very warlike life and was not afraid of any potentate on earth. And even Mohammed, who was after all part of a comparatively late time period, was a notable commander despite his notorious epilepsy. Also, we have to visualize Moses as an imposingly coarse person despite his somnambulistic dream story, since he would otherwise not have been able to lead a grumbling people from Egypt to Jordan with all the exertions and hardships involved. Ignatius of Loyola, who was profoundly hallucinatory inclined and the founder of the Jesuit order, was an outstanding soldier and a rough daredevil before he turned towards his spiritual activity. The Holy Teresa, to also name a magician, was often in a state of catalepsy for days before she again began extensive organizational work, which demanded high standards of her mental and physical strength. Some of the greatest people from the most epic stories throughout history, even our recent religious history, the author here is saying that not only were they magicians, but they were irritable bastards who had to force and drag their people with them. That's kind of where we're at right now too. We're a small group of people, us mind warriors, citizen samurais, guerrilla gurus, and warrior monks. And we have to fight through the crowd. We have to fight through the mob of the profane in order to share our experiences, in order to share our knowledge with others. And we do it diligently, and we do it daily, and we do it for all sorts of reasons. Everyone has a different reason for doing this. And that's something that you should share as you're going through your work and as you're learning. Make sure you share with others why you do this work. So that was our work from the book Magic History Theory Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. That's what we were going to cover today. Another very cool section. This is such a great book, folks. I hope you're enjoying this so far because we're just scratching the surface. And when we return, we're going to go back into my Instagram and we're going to take a look at the next post and just follow that path as I learned magic. And I'll share with you everything from those early days in just a moment. All right, welcome back, folks. So we are going to, again, go back to my Instagram page, @TheOccultTechnician on Instagram. You're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and we're going to look at the second post, okay? You should be seeing it here on your screen now. And basically, this was a post where I was working with tarot cards for the first time. Now, we're not going to get too deep into tarot cards or any of that right now. But basically, what I want to talk about with this picture, okay, and why it's important, is, again, this was the early days of my work, okay? And when we look at this picture, the first thing that I see is the mat that I had on the table that the cards were sitting on. There's a pentagram on it. It's black. It has some gold designs around the border and stuff, right? I just bought that from Amazon. Had literally no meaning to me whatsoever. I just thought, oh, that seems occult. That seems like witchcraftery stuff. That's kind of cool. I'm going to buy that, right? And the tarot cards, a set called the Wild Unknown Tarot. A friend of mine had the same tarot deck. I liked that it had the guidebook to kind of explain what each of the cards are. Okay, that's very important. And again, we'll get deeper into tarot and how to actually pull the cards and do the readings and all that stuff later. But the reason I wanted to take a minute to focus on this picture is for all of you who are also in the beginning stages of your magical journey, okay? If you look around my house right now here in the Mind War Estates, it's magic stuff everywhere. The symbols, the art, the accoutrements, the statues, all, the magic mushrooms, all of the different things that I have collected over all of these years. All of the different things that found meaning. And when I use them in my magical practices, actually were successful. They created something. Something actually occurred when I would use these things. All of those things took time to build up. But when you see in the beginning, it was just me sitting at the kitchen table with this little mat I bought off of Amazon. I think I got the tarot cards from Amazon too. And I say that because I don't want you to be discouraged in your early days. When you look at other magicians and say, damn, dude, look at all that cool stuff they have. Look at their studio or look at their altar and all of these cool things. How did they get that? I'm not there yet. I can't, compete with them. None of that. There is no comparisons here. None of that is important. Start wherever you need to start. Do not be discouraged with the things you may lack right now. Because what you're going to find is the stuff that you thought you needed to do magic in the beginning, and that maybe at this point you're frustrated that you don't have them. You're lusting over other things that people have that you wish you had in your magic collection. You're going to find that those actually had no meaning and you don't need them. And they aren't necessary for you to do magic. You're going to find the things that you need. But again, in those early days, start with whatever you have. Whenever you're ready, start with whatever you have. You don't have to go in and buy a grimoire from 500 years ago that cost you $10,000, right? On the early days, I saw a black mirror that was like 500 years old. It was like 17 grand and I wanted it so bad. I thought, I can't be a magician if I don't have this black mirror from back in the medieval days. No. It was cool. I would love to have it, but it wasn't necessary, and it's not necessary for you. Again, you're not here to replicate the stuff that I do, my style, any of it. Bring your own style in. Get your magical devices wherever you get them. Find them wherever you need them. As you'll see, I moved way away from Amazon, and all sorts of magical things started coming into my life, right? And we'll talk about those things and how I acquired them or how I built them and created them, right? But don't feel bad right now. if the most you have is a mat from Amazon and some tarot cards, right? And one last thing that we see in this post is the words wolf moon. Okay. So very early on, I realized, and this was from someone had taught me this, the importance of the moon in what we do here, right? And we'll get into it more, but I think that's important for you to choose a time to do your magic. It has to be something important to you. So personally, I do my magic on the new moon and the full moon, and we will get into detail of why I do that. But again, it was those very early days. I was just learning. I just pulled these cards. I didn't even really have any questions, right? I just pulled them. I just thought, oh, you pull cards, right? I was sitting there sober-minded, and I just pulled them. And, when you're grappling with these emotions that led you to magic in the first place, because that's normally what happens. People who are happy and have everything that they need and whatever normally don't turn to magic, right? It's usually in your darkest days, in your lowest times, where you desperately reach out for something. You've tried you've tried to believe in all the religions. You've tried to believe in, society, the military, your job, whatever it is. You've tried it all, and it all has just been empty. It all felt like it had 0 calories, and you were never satiated. But ultimately, that led you to magic. And that's a beautiful thing. And now that you've got there, once you've cast everything off and you recognize that you are at your rawest moment, and you say, magic is my only option at this point. Start wherever you are. You don't have to wait until you have a cloak and a dagger and a this and a that. Start where you're at. Okay. And don't be ashamed of it. Don't feel like you're not up to it. Remember, you're just in the early days. And like we talked about in the book here, even in those primeval days where you're part of a tribe and you're going to go be a medicine man, it took them 2 years just to get the basics down. And like I told you, I've been at this for 3.5 years as a true practicing magician. And it was just in the last few months that my life finally had a major transformation. That transformation that magic promises. And you're going to have it too. So again, that was just my second post on my Instagram. We're going to use my Instagram as kind of a timeline. We're going to use it as a way to show the progression of magic in my life. It shows some of my slip-ups. It shows some of the silly things that I did. It shows a lot of me trying to force things with magic that didn't work. And it shows that once I stopped forcing things and just allowed the magic to take hold, all of a sudden all these beautiful and amazing things began to occur. But I think the Instagram is going to be a great way to follow through that journey as we learn magic in our series on magic here on the Mind War podcast. And as always, I appreciate you being here, folks. And remember, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War.